I would love for you to come out so you can try whatever you want, but also to like see how we do this thing. Because we make a lot of stuff.
And this is where we asked Corey if he's been recording.
Yeah. We every episode, every time we film, we do this. All the good stuff happens off camera, so then we're like, oh, well, Corey just got in the habit of recording. Bastrop's an easy field trip because I go to Houston a lot, and I go through Bastrop on my way to Houston. So that's an easy field trip.
For sure. Let me know. We're doing, because the industry, to me, especially when it comes down to mezcal, because mezcal as a category is raised by the industry. I don't think I can say that about other brands. Like a new vodka brand, the industry cares, but for a couple weeks, right? A new whiskey, the industry supports it for a couple weeks. And this is not any shortcoming of the industry or bartenders themselves, but it's just so much in and out. You know, someone comes and they meet you and they really care about whiskey one day, then the next day they don't care. But mezcal is evergreen. We rally together in a community and we really like it. So we have a program now where we're going to be, I'll pick people up here in Austin, I'll drive them out. I'll do the tasting for them and then bring them back. So industry people specifically, bartender friends of mine, we got a big list. I can put you on that list if you want.
Cool, so we'd love that.
The same thing actually happened in Kentucky with Kentucky bourbon, where it was the bartenders in Kentucky that grew the Kentucky Trail, that grew all of the communications, and then COVID happened, and a lot of the bigger players, ended up saying, wait a second, we need to send our product to New York and California and these bigger markets. And a lot of the smaller distilleries, it's like, well, where's our barrel pick? And why are we going to the back of the line? We helped to raise this up. So, bars and bartenders are a vital part of selling a brand and moving a brand. It is impossible these days, if you're a small brand, to break into even just your local liquor store.
Important, this guy here.
You got to rinse.
Yeah, I'll give you a little rinse with some hot water. Tea-wise, I don't know, Corey, if you want to try and get a close-up of this one. This one is one of these ones that has the golden mold. This is different than the last one because it's also fermented tea, but it's fermented with a different mold called Rhodium cristatum. See that yellow? Looks like pollen on there. Yeah, please. So this is a red tea that has been fermented, which is very, very unusual. This is completely unorthodox to do this. But you've got a tea that's a red tea, aka black tea, right? What we call black tea, Lipton, chai, Earl Grey, that kind of tea, oxidized tea. And then it's been pressed into a brick and fermented in the style of a hei cha. So it's both a red tea and a hei cha.
That's very cool.
And this is ancient tree tea. And it's actually also purple ancient trees, which is a whole other thing. Sometimes, like you're talking about with the agave turning red, you get the redness coming in. Sometimes you get tea plants that are purple. It's a genetic thing, but sometimes it's also an environmental thing. These ones are old trees and they're just purple for life. They're just purple plants.
That's cool.
And this has been made from that. We call this Violet Crown. And I'll go ahead and get this going.
What is a batch? So a batch of mezcal is relatively small if you get it as a craft. I don't like the word craft, but the craft style, whatever. How big is a batch of tea that is scarce and is of a rare variety? How big do those get?
Gosh, they can be really small.
Yeah.
Like they can be really, really small. They can be like hundreds of kilos.
Oh, wow.
A couple hundred kilos. And, I think a normal size for like a single farm tea could be like a metric ton.
Okay.
Metric ton of tea is like on the higher end of like what you're going to get from a given season. If you're trying to keep this one mountain, this one farm, this one season all together, you're not blending it, to make a bigger quantity, then you're looking at, and that's like someone with, depends how many plants these people have, how many people they have working for them, what their resources are, how fast they can process the tea, because you have to process it right away. You pick it, then you got to process it. And so if you don't have enough space to process it, that limits your production scale. If you don't have people to pick it, that limits your production scale.
These are all the same challenges with mezcal. Yeah. Like almost identical.
Right, at what point would you think that this is too much to process? You're no longer getting a definition from that farm or from that region.
I don't feel qualified to answer that because I am not a tea farmer and I don't want to misspeak. But I would say that the farmers I work with, I'd say that Li Shulin is a very productive farmer who produces a lot of tea for a single farm, and he'll have a metric ton of tea is the most he'll have of any one tea, and that might be not from one patch. That's multiple patches combined, and he can produce a metric ton of tea doing that. So go ahead and pour this one into your cup there. We'll give this one a rinse.
This one, you know, it has a totally different profile
Absolutely.
on the nose. And I'm trying to pinpoint, I know this is going to sound strange, but I think it does smell like salty Lay's original potato chips to me. There's a starchy saltiness to it, but something that's still kind of not, a little touch of fruitiness, right? So it makes me want to eat it as well as drink it, which is always a plus, I think.
This is also from a brick. The reason this is a little chunk like this is because this is pressed into it. Here, I'll actually show you what the brick looks like. This is our brick. This is what we're drinking, this guy here.
Oh, wow.
500-gram brick of this tea. And so this one, this is 2022, I believe. And we're super into this right now because we just got it. And it's new for us, you know, this is a new tea that we have not had before.
So I was saying earlier that I'm spoiled for tea now. I was trying some older loose leaf green tea that I had from an Asian supermarket, and it now tastes sort of papery and dusty. And since I've been doing this, and then I went back to that tea, I'm going to have to restock. Oh, that opened up nicely.
Yeah, and it's just getting going because these pressed teas, you know, pressed aged teas like this, they have a little bit more of a distinct character to them. We're actually not open on Mondays. You're good. Busy front door today.
It's Monday. Everybody back from Thanksgiving is like, gotta go see people that aren't my family.
Yeah, I've seen that in the liquor store as well. You'll see, you know, the younger people back from college that are just wandering the streets and going into the stores and trying things. So it's like, you just need to get out of the house and get away from your family. You've been away from your family.
There's something, I mean, and tell me if there's no right or wrong, but I'm going to sip it one more time because I think something snuck up the back of palate for me on this. I make fragrances as well, so there's certain ingredients. So it has an element of velvet or vetiver at the very, very tail end, which is kind of musky, but an artful, weedy muskiness. It's very cool. It's very complex, but it's vibrant. But I have to really pull to get the notes because it's really so unison and so balanced.
Wait for this one. This one, you see that color? How much darker the color is? Because this is a pressed tea. Unlike that last one was loose leaves, this one is pressed. And so it's much more dynamic. You get a much more pronounced curve. From as you go from one steeping to the next. As I always say, the difference between tea and coffee is you only steep coffee once. And the nature of tea is that it has this, it's got a whole narrative, it's got a whole life cycle. And so we haven't hit the peak yet.
Is there, similarly, so there's a pounds per square inch that you want for the perfect espresso. Is there a similar kind of tension that you want for pucks for tea? That gives you the best? Is there? Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you're pressing the tea into a brick, for example, the tea that we're drinking now, if you press it too tight, you won't get that mold. It can't live. It can't live in a very dense brick. Right? It has to have a little bit of air. So it's more. Whereas like a pu'er from Yunnan, you want it really well. You don't want it too tight either. The tighter it is, the slower it's going to ferment because the less surface area there is, the less room there is for stuff to happen, gas exchange of any kind. But the tighter it is, the more you can fit in a pallet. You know what I mean? So there's this pressure to make these really, exactly. So you've got people in an industrial setting, a commodity setting, pressing these really tight bricks. They call them iron cakes because they're so hard you have to like really hammer at them. And some teas traditionally are super, super tight, like Heijuan, which is a grade up from the type so 2 grades down or 1 grade up. From 2 grades down from the last tea we had, 1 grade up from this tea that we're having now is Heijuan, and that's a very, very dense brick, and you need a saw to cut it. You can't use a knife to cut it. You have to use a saw.
It's really interesting to draw a comparison to fermenting agave, right, and mezcal. So you see a lot of different types of fermentation, even with the same types of plants. How I do it, because I've learned it from mezcaleros, often they will put huge bricks or rocks to suppress it so that it actually doesn't get the oxygen or it only gets what is in the fermenting liquid itself. And then other folks, like in Santa Catarina Minas, where they make clay distilled mezcal, they want a cap. They call it a cap, and they keep treating the cap. They'll take it and they'll like pat it,
Right.
which then again kind of protects the fermentation from kind of what you want here. They're kind of trying to keep it and protect the agave from it a little bit, right? They just want all the native stuff or all the residential yeast that's in this plant to keep it a nice ecosystem. No external stuff, even though it's inevitably going to happen.
Is there a difference between what a farmer distiller would be doing as opposed to a large commercial distiller? For example, when you're crushing the agave after it's cooked, you know, the type of machinery that could be used, going from like the big stone rolling rock that with a donkey, or you can have, you know, there would be ways of using like spinning and chipper shredders and things like that where you can get maximum extraction.
You saw me having this dumb smile on my face. This is such a good question, and I'll give you two specific examples, but just bear in mind, depending where you're making this spirit and processing the raw material within Mexico, it's different. So in Chihuahua, where they make sotol, and they do make some agave spirits called lechuguilla there too, or palmilla, it is typically a gas-powered shredder, like you would use to shred wood or shred other kinds of agricultural material. Very common there. However, it's not as common. So Creador, which we've tried previously and what we'll try here shortly in Nueva León, the La Mata, that's hand smashed. Right? So no mechanical elements, and often it's a carved out piece of wood, also sometimes called a canoe, that you just put the agave fiber.
Hey.
And so having done that, how I process all the stuff I make is by hand with a little sledgehammer. And this is why my shoulders are so big. But, so let's just then take tequila and then mezcal. So tequila, for the most part, there's one brand called Siembra Valles or Siembra Metal Ancestral. It's a beautiful tequila that's made with a Michoacan style still. All that's hand mashed. But that's just how they do it there. So that's the stylistic. You could say that's tradition. Tradition is, well, what's the house style where you live?
Right.
Don't tell me how to make tea. This is I've been doing my whole life. I'm not going to tell you how to make tea.
Right, exactly.
And that's the thing that's interesting about the word tradition. It's like, well, it's not traditional. Get off the high horse.
Says who?
Says who? It's
Says who?
completely
Are you
arbitrary.
telling them?
That's right. Right. Some people ferment in plastic. I do. Why? Because it works. That's all they have access to. We'll get into some other details like in the future, but the big difference is usually with mezcal, certain places use shredder, but it's hand smash. But with tequila, almost entirely, either a mechanical shredder or a tahona like you're talking about, which can either be animal-powered stone wheel or a mechanical stone wheel. Traditional could say that if it's not drawn by a mule or a horse, it's not traditional. Do you think it tastes different if it was ran by an electrical engine versus a horse? I don't think so. But these are the kinds of things that people do. So it really just comes down to what the category is. Tequila is the biggest, and often you will see fermentation and distillation occur sin bagazo, so without any fiber, right? So this actually would be an interesting question. Is there any kind of tea that you would steep and then completely remove the tea leaves and steep it again? Probably not, right?
What do you mean?
Well, so with many ways that tequila is made, so they go and they do the ferment. They squeeze the juice out,
Right.
And then they just ferment the juice. And then the juice goes into the still for first distillation, or the juice goes into the still for second distillation. And there's a real good reason why to do that. And that's because it's cleaner.
Yeah.
It's hard to get in there and pull the tea out. So
In
I can't imagine.
In whiskey, it'd be the difference between grain on and grain off.
That's right, exactly.
For
Exactly
the
the
distillation.
Got it.
Where if the grain is in there, you actually get some caramelization happening as you're distilling.
Precisely. Yeah, or burning in the mezcal case.
Yeah.
If you have a piece of agave, because it's direct fire, you actually get some of those burn notes depending what still it is. But at any rate, it all just comes down to what's house style.
Right.
You can have people tell you, well, this isn't traditional mezcal. Okay. Says it's usually a gringo telling me. I'm like, okay, all right, dude,
exactly.
that's
exactly.
fine. Like, sure, I'm not. It's not like I've been doing this for over a decade.
Oh, dude, 100%. And I'm gonna go ahead and visual cue here I'd like to see what this next one is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, speaking of tradition, okay, we previously spoke of a tradition of the Europeans coming into Mexico and saying their spirits are the best and thusly driving out Mexican-made spirits. This happened with Sotol. There was over 250,000 liters approximately that were destroyed during Prohibition. This is something that the Desert Door guys probably don't know and probably wouldn't tell you, that Mexico said, we don't want our own thing. It took them a long time to have pride.
Right.
Tequila in the 70s, Mezcal in the late 90s and the 2000s, Bacanora in the 2000s, Sotol just kind of now. It's even the smallest of the category.
Right.
And so we talked about a denomination of order. If you're in 9 states in Mexico, you can produce something that can legally be called Mezcal as long as you pay and as long as you get it tested.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Does that mean that if you're making something next to someone and you don't want to get it certified that it's not good? It does not mean that.
Nah.
It just means there's less obstruction. There's more vision, more creativity, because you don't have to play by any particular rules, but you didn't need to anyway.
Right.
These folks are making very quality distillates. So a similar tale occurred in Nuevo León. Nuevo León is just right south of Texas, right? Tamaulipas is borders us is Nuevo León. And there was at one point in my friend Luis Loya, who does this brand La Mata, I want him to correct me because he lives in Monterrey. In Nuevo León. But suffice it to say that modern times, let's say 20th century, the beer industry drove out the mezcal and made it illegal and made sure that no one could be making mezcal in Nuevo León or call it mezcal. And so just recently have some folks, in this case Jorge Torres, returned to making traditional mezcal like they used to make it, even though it's been, actually this is what I might sip with you, it's been years since they were able to make it because people would drink beer. If you ask someone in Monterrey, oh, where do I get good mezcal? It's like, you get beer here, right? So now there's a shift to return to tradition, and this mezcal, which is made from a plant called Castilla, and as I'm told, this is the last batch that will ever occur. These plants no longer exist. There was a big forest fire out in the mountains by this is called a viñata, I think, in Nuevo León, Palenque in Oaxaca, and he does it really, really different. Do either of you know what pulque is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So pulque is it's a fermented drink that you ascertain by scooping the crap out of the piña of a living, growing agave.
Okay.
As you've cut it terribly, it tries to repair itself and thusly produces aguamiel, a sugary substance to prepare itself. I've heard up to 10 liters a day.
Wow.
So you go in and you collect it, and if you leave that ounce, it's so sweet, has so much sugar, because it's trying to repair itself, it ferments quickly, right? And then that resulting fermented drink is called pulque. So this particular, no one I've ever seen that makes mezcal has done it like this. Mm-hmm. Modern day, at least in the market. He cooks agave, smashes it, puts it in a plastic container, don't tell anybody, but it's a plastic barrel,
Right.
and pours pulque over it.
Okay.
Pulque. So he pours already fermented pulque over it.
Yes.
Wow.
So this is where I'm getting these funky rum
That's right.
type of notes, yeah.
But yeah, I love that because it's like you're saying, why the hell not?
Well,
Why
they
the
make
hell
pulque
not?
there. Why not do it, right?
Why the hell not?
Actually, they might get the pulque from Michoacan, but don't tell anybody. Again, Luis, I'll confirm with him. Mm-hmm. But then you're talking about twice distillation in copper, like you would with any other high quality mezcal. But if you were going to ask someone in Oaxaca if this was tradition, you know what they say? Absolutely not, because it's not their tradition.
Right.
If you ask anybody in Puebla, putting pulque over agave to let it ferment, is that tradition? Of course not. Mm-hmm. It's just not their tradition. So a diversity of opinions is very, very important with mezcal, especially, and tequila, because just because tequila has additives in it, they can get as mad as they want. If you like it, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
You drink the thing you want.
So are
Cheers
we
to that.
Yeah, are we allowed to call this one mezcal, or is it?
Heck yeah, you can, even though on the label it says destilado de agave.
There we go.
But it's a mezcal.
Yeah.
So
So the government is getting involved in regulating. Yeah, it is good. Government's getting involved in regulating what is mezcal.
That's right.
And you have to pay somebody to say, okay, this is certified as mezcal.
Yes, and they do offer certain values, and that's what I said. I'm talking with someone that's basically consulting the agency in the Mexican government, I think the agricultural segment, and we're trying to figure out if we can. I won't be rewriting the rules, but I can help consult and we've discussed what kinds of things need to change.
So smaller farmers that basically are running a small operation, and like I said, they don't have the marketing, they don't have the funding, and they can't call it mezcal because they can't pay the government the fee.
In the simplistic terms, that's absolutely right.
And
Now,
my question is, the government cares, and therefore the U.S. government cares, I reckon, because when you're labeling it here, do Mexicans care? When they're drinking it, do they care about this? Do they care? Is it like, oh, this is from Nuevo Leon, you can't call this tequila, can't call this mezcal?
I'm going to give my opinion. This
Yeah.
is my personal opinion that may or may not reflect people, but this does reflect my friends.
Sure.
There is a massive increase in pride for Mexican-made spirits. Is it new? Yes. Do people drink more Blanco now, or is that, and in terms of cocktail bars too have helped do this, but there is a resurgence of a return to the earth and a return to quality products without additives in Mexico itself.
Yeah.
And so mezcal is seeing massive popularity. Good mezcal. There are some that are Creador owned and stuff, which are fine, but they're flaccid and don't have a lot of flavor. So it's changing there, the mindset with the younger generations. So it's hard to say. So in my assessment, I think that mezcal is becoming more popular in Mexico. The U.S. for now is far ahead in terms of popularity and overall the consumption of mezcal, which is kind of strange, right? You would think that there'd be more mezcal consumed there.
And the popularity of the American consumer has actually pushed mezcal up as a category. So a lot of international players are now in the field trying to create more quantity of product. And then, of course, you've got celebrities, you've got large corporations that are trying to pump up the volume. And is that going to, how does that affect the farmers? And
have you heard about the kind of current state of agave pricing in tequila in Guadalajara?
I heard there was actually a crash coming, and they were chopping up fields and giving it to the animals as feed.
Yes. So it's, if I recall correctly, Carlos Camarena, one of the better maestros for tequila, I think he said it was a 14-year cycle. And we're now at the end of the cycle where agave prices are dropping. And so, well, what do you do with the agave? Feed it to animals? I mean,
seems like a waste.
It is a waste, but there's so many brands that have come to market. There's such market saturation. Mezcal also is down, I think, about 4% year over year now in terms of exported liters. But that's offset by other areas of Europe and things getting more importation. But tequila, I've seen a couple things happening, and I'll share a few things that I've seen, which I think is cool. And that is, in order to use the agave or turn it into something, maybe you got to get flexible with what you call it, and you can call it destilado de agave. So I'm seeing bulk destilado de agave being imported from Jalisco. It's the first time there are offers on the table for high quality makers to say, like, do you want to bring this in bulk? Because you can't bring it in bulk if you call it 100% tequila. Right, unless you're one of the people that grandfathered in with one of those. So anyway, there are ways around it, but it's going to be interesting and potentially problematic, because if you can't make money farming agave, what do? You farm something else. And so these farmers will go maybe to corn or some more reliable
avocados.
crops.
Right.
Yeah. What do you? Is that the same thing with tea? As the stuff, the farmers like, I don't want to make tea anymore.
Yeah. It's been kind of an arc where it's like you had a phase of time where people no longer wanted to make tea because they're like, I want my kids to go to the city. I want them to not live like a farmer. I want them to go to the city. I want them to get a professional job. I wanted them to abandon this lifestyle. And now you're finally starting to get this, like you're talking about the Mexican pride and Mexican spirits. You're starting to get Chinese pride in tea again after this period of like the 80s, the 90s, the open door policy.
It's totally the same.
They wanted everything. They wanted wine. They wanted red wine. You know, they don't want tea. They want Coca-Cola. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They want bubble tea. You know what I mean? That's what the kids want to drink. The kids don't want to drink tea like this. But now we're kind of on the swing back where Chinese people, and Chinese people are and have always been the number one consumer of Chinese tea. And that's a big difference between tea and something like you're saying mezcal, or even like coffee, cacao. The people who grow those things are not the major consumers of them because of colonialism, but Chinese tea was never colonized, and China was never colonized. And so you have this consumption, you have this consumption where the best Chinese tea is produced for Chinese people. The most knowledgeable, the 100 most knowledgeable people about Chinese tea are all in China. You know what I mean? Whereas coffee, you know, the coffee connoisseurs are not in Ethiopia, and the chocolate connoisseurs are not in Oaxaca. You know what I mean? The people who own the industry are not in the places where these things come from.
It's a really, really good point. And that return to home and to the product and to the pride is a trend that I've seen in Mezcal. Absolutely.
Same thing happens in language. Our family over the generations were not allowed to speak French in the home.
Oh, wow.
Because you were going to be stuck in the same small fishing village for the rest of your life, and you would be condemning every member of your family there on out. So they forbid the speaking French in the home, and so that you would get out into the world. And of course, then a couple of world wars happen, and so that changes the whole nature. Same thing is happening with the farms now. A lot of them have been taken over and bought by large commercial interests because it's become more and more difficult for a small family to get along. So we've been fortunate enough to talk about J.T. Mellick and the Wilson Valley Mercantile, and being able to create spirits and have another industry, even a little distillery tasting room, to be able to keep that family farm alive. And as they said, Mr. John Evans said, he said, I need to make money. I need to make more money from the crops that I'm growing, and making spirits from it was a way to do that. Now, I understand that in Mezcal, a lot of these smaller farmers, they're like you said, selling raw product to the United States or to other commercial places, and then that's getting put in fancy bottles and rebranded. And
well, Richard, it's a good point, because I want to be a little more precise, because people will scrutinize kind of what I say about this, which is important.
Right.
But
right.
also don't be a jerk about it.
Yeah.
I could use another word, but that's one I'll use. The thing is, so if we look at Oaxaca, okay, now there are many states that make that make mezcal. Oaxaca they make approximately 92% of all exported liters. So it is the vast majority of the mezcal that you'll see. Now the stuff we just tried, this is probably less than 1/100th of a percent. Maybe 2 cases of this came into the United States. So it's a different thing. So not equal. For some time now, you could get bulk destilado de agave from Oaxaca.
Right.
Many producers were willing to export their product. And if the economics are there to bottle elsewhere, now there is a kind of a conflict, and there is a topic of discussion that says, well, let's be clear, Marcus says, but we're bottling it.
Right.
Does that take away a Mexican job? Now this is the conversation, and this is things that weighs on me to always kind of determine. Are we helping more by buying all this mezcal in bulk and shipping it over and having us bottle it? There's just many constraints there. So in terms of mezcal or destilado de agave in bulk, that's been available for some time. Now, but what the shift is in stuff made from blue agave and tequila, that now you can buy that in bulk. I've never seen that before in over a decade. And so these distillers are getting smarter and a little more shrewd as to maybe making some money off these plants finally, instead of putting these farmers out of work, right? So that's the distinction. So tequila, that's not tequila, but I guess it brings up the topic again, but bulk tequila, destilado de agave, that's what's becoming available.
So if I'm standing as a novice, and this happens in whiskey, it happens in rum, where you're standing at a shelf and you're trying to find something on the shelf, and you go by brand name recognition. Like, that's the things that I'm going to be focused on, is either is there a tasting happening and I can try it and I can learn the story from someone like yourself, or am I sitting there going, well, Vida del Maguey, the Illegal, the Dos Sombres, those are the things that I know the brand names, and is that a signifier of quality for somebody like you going into the store? What are you looking for?
So again, I live and let live, right? This is how I feel. So if you want to drink Casamigos, fine. I don't care. I know what I like to drink. I understand how this stuff's made. It's not my job to tell you how to drink, right? So the general guidelines I have for anybody wanting to get a bottle of mezcal, and I've had them all, damn near close. And there's a wide variety of complexity and quality. So price is typically the best way to discern what level of mezcal you're getting. Okay, and what I mean by level is not quality necessarily, but sometimes it's quality, but it is complexity, richness, and scarcity. So if you go from 35, I'll give you 3 layers, right? Because this might be specific tools that consumers can use. If you go anywhere from about $35 to $55, let's say, or you can go sub 30, but I haven't seen many. They are often lower proof, which is fine. Damn near all tequila is 80 proof.
Right.
There's some new ones, which are good, and they're higher proof. But you'll get a lower proof mezcal, and as more water is added, typically, sometimes they go further into the run, but usually it's water that's added, you get a little more harshness and some of the more minerally lactic notes that can be good, but they don't express themselves in a vibrant way. They're kind of flat, flat cheese, flat rock. Agave, the smoke comes out more the more you dilute it, if there is carbonization of the agave. And so that's what you'll get, and that's cool. And that stuff's pretty reasonably priced. And again, a very busy day here at the tea
Very
house.
busy day here.
A lot of people coming and going.
Hey y'all, we are closed on Mondays. We are closed. Yeah, sorry about that. Come back tomorrow. Usually we never get anyone coming in on Mondays.
Yeah, usually don't get
holiday
anyone.
unto itself.
Yeah.
And then if you go from 55 to like 100, you get stuff that's usually a little bit higher proof, can be cheaper because it comes from other states outside of Oaxaca. There's some great deals for stuff from Creador because it's not super popular yet, but you can get a really nice bottle. So that's where you're going to step it up in terms of complexity and probably going to get higher proof. As long as you're not paying for a really fancy bottle, the product itself will be better.
Now there's something with fancy bottles, because this happens a lot in liquor stores and in wine and in brandies, where you'll see a bottle and you wonder if they spent all of that money on the bottle. Did they spend that much money and time on the liquid inside of it? You know, something
What
that
do you think
looks
normally
like,
is the case?
usually, from my experience, I'm getting less quality, pretty bottles.
Yeah.
The-
Very Instagrammable.
Yeah.
Kind of like people. The more fashionable and in front of the camera they are, sometimes they're more vapid. Right. This is a metaphor. I'm not saying that about people.
We're looking at you, Internet.
That's right. Whatever you guys say. But lastly, there's this whole other echelon where you're going to be over $100. Okay.
Right.
And that's where the scarcity of agave, you'll get different kinds of varietals that maybe you've never seen before, remote places, because transportation costs come into play. That is the sweet spot for if you really want to hone in on a style or a place. You get much more definition. It's like a better lens, a better camera, right? And you get much more granularity about production, and you feel more connected to the brand. It's usually a smaller brand, and it's just a regular stock bottle. So you know that the juice itself is what's
That's
really
something
Yeah.
a lot of people sort of miss in their mind when they're looking at a map and you're pointing to China or you're pointing to Mexico, like where the population centers are, where the elevations are, the difficulty getting to those places of elevation and getting product away from those. There are no trains, for example, heading through the middle of Mexico.
No, I mean, let's be honest, right? So you make it at a place that's remote. It's hard to get to, often very treacherous terrain. Takes you 7 times as long because it's not really paved properly, or it's been stopped because they're fixing it, as you say, and it's went in, went out. So, and that goes into a gas can-like container that is then taken from a truck into either central Oaxaca or the bigger cities, depending which state of the mezcal is produced in, and then it's bottled there, or it's put into other bigger things and then exported out to someplace in the States. How sustainable does that sound, right?
Yeah.
It's like making a mixtape. You know what I mean? Like you go and you do it from scratch, you give it to a guy, and he's like, all right, I'll make a couple copies. And this is the thing that is really beautiful about mezcal, is that I want everybody to have the opportunity to try the best and the most basic of mezcales, but just realize it's not easy to bring it. The infrastructure is not there. And there's bound to be high altitude places in China where they make tea. And it's like,
That's
how do you
the
even
only
get it
place
done?
you make tea.
See,
Tea is
there
a
you go.
high altitude plant.
Yeah.
It only grows above a certain. Well, I mean, you only produce tea above, at high altitude generally.
Do you know roughly like how many meters?
Oh, I mean, you can grow it at sea level, but good tea comes from higher altitude.
It's the same kind of with the agave.
Yeah.
The higher that it grows. But just always realize there's a lot of things behind the scenes. And to kind of put a period on that topic, for me, I like details. I don't want to be inundated with them, but I want to understand how this fermentation was. This yellow fermented tea that we had, like, how, why? Like, did you pitch yeast? Is it just naturally occurring? And until you start asking yourself the question, how is it made? Then you don't really understand all those costs that accrue from that at a very remote palenque at 10,000 feet above sea level that comes and makes it down.
And even when it comes to a product that's made like right here in Austin, Texas, for example, and getting that into liquor stores, what liquor stores is Creador in?
So we have multiple brands, including Old Highboard Gin, but for the sake of Mezcal, so Creador is basically like a 2-3-man show in terms of distribution. So you can get it at Travis Heights, you can get it at Austin Shaker, you can get it at AB Liquor, some of the best boutique liquor stores in Austin and the outskirts of Austin that sell the best mezcales. I love our mezcal, that's not what I'm saying, but the fact that they would even consider this beautiful product on the same level as some of these others that we love, it's very flattering, you know. Now, bear in mind, I'm not taking credit, Jose Alberto makes it, but to the fact that we're so close to it and we get to help kind of share his legacy and teach people to come into the tasting room in Bastrop is really, really a beautiful thought. But
so you did mention the 3 biggest dogs in the fight in Texas, and so if people are going into the large supermarket of liquor stores, they're not going to find your product. How do they?
Not yet. I mean, wherever you would find the greatest collection of spirits or the greatest agave spirits in Austin or in Texas, you will find Creador. And that is enough for now, you know, because I've been playing music a long time, different kinds of places, making records, all this. Often the most beautiful moments that you encounter with a band or music are not in front of 1,000 people. You know what I mean? It's not big audience stuff. Will Mezcal, like what we've been drinking today, ever reach a critical mass? I don't think so. It'll inch up further, and then some of us will die, and then they'll get to replace us, and then. But that's it. I mean, and it's the same thing with tea. Do you think that people will ever really look at the artistry of it and the different categories with the level of detail that you could with mezcal? Is that, you think that people want that?
You know, it's the niche, and it remains niche.
That's right.
And even in China, it's niche. You know, the average Chinese person is not going to know about all of this stuff like we're doing here. And I think that there's an aspect where it's like, Li Shu Lin, who's one of our main farmers, if we got a contract with HEB or whatever, he doesn't make enough tea for HEB. He doesn't make enough tea for, you know, Walmart to put it in every Walmart in the country. He just doesn't. We can't. And then people would be like, oh, well, I got this last year and it tastes like this and it tastes different this year. Well, like, yeah, that's the deal. But they're not used to that. They want the Big Mac to be the Big Mac no matter where they go. And I think that there's something beautiful about the degree to which things like this that are so close to the earth and to the people and to the plants and have this unique personality that can't be captured and copied and standardized will always resist commodification. And you can try your best to commodify it and the spirit goes away. What makes it special vanishes. And so you can move towards that. The market wants you to do that. The market wants you to scale up. They want you to standardize. They want you to mechanize, automate. But you can't, and you can make tea that way. And you can make mezcal that way, I reckon. And you can make tequila that way. But you can't make this that way. You can't make this that way. You know what I mean? I think that's for me, that's you're right. That's a really interesting thing to think about.
And there's this, I think it was Jimmy Carr. I love British comedians, but he was talking about a story he heard about Kurt Vonnegut. There's this party of one of Vonnegut's really rich friends, and this guy is talking to the guest, the host of the party, and he's like, "Well, you got all this stuff. Like, how do you keep making money? How do you keep making bigger and more and more?" And he says, "You know, the difference between you and I is that I have enough." And so that's what this stuff is, right? The producers can make more, but at some point it is enough, meaning, 100 more liters, but that's not to get into every HEB. That's not the same kind of thing.
Exactly.
But it's just a matter, to me, it's a microcosm of where people are lacking.
Yes.
I think we,
100%.
I think we forget, how farms work and what seasons are,
Right.
and that you do things in a season because this is the downtime. Now we can make our spirits.
Yep, exactly.
That we've done the harvesting and we're heading into a slower season. Now we can concentrate on making preserves. So there's a reason to the flow of the way
Right.
the way things are done, and we've sort of lost connection with that because we're going
Exactly.
to Walmart and large supermarkets, and it's always there. You get bananas from another country because they're no longer being produced from this country. The same thing with your berries. Like I've just bought some strawberries today, and they were a little bit smaller. They probably came from another source because 2 or 3 weeks ago they were all big and plump and juicy. Now they're a little bit tiny. They're probably coming from somewhere else.
Maybe you just don't eat strawberries in the fall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I bet they're actually good in the fall, but just, what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
maybe you just drink mezcal from a different region in
Right.
the spring
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
So it's just,
yeah.
consumers will do what they need to do, and I want them just to have some basic set of skills or set of guidelines, parameters, whatever you want, that they can at least know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And that's it. And
Now, Corey, you brought a special bottle for us to try as well. Did you want to do that in a separate episode, or you want to sip it now?
We can just try it right quick.
Let's do it real quick. I think this is going to have to be the
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
one for me.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this bottle right here
Oh, boy.
is from a wedding in Oaxaca. And so I don't know much about the story. If I get some information, I will append it to this episode.
I was looking, I think it's from a Matitan.
Okay.
So if this is the same brand, which is really nice, and this, as we were kind of talking, very high acid compared to the other stuff that we've been drinking. And you said it's distilled with, speaking of strawberries, right?
We
one,
got two separate bottles, and I don't know if this one, because they're not labeled, if this one was strawberry or not. I don't think it is, but maybe. It's pretty berry forward.
Give it a smell.
And so this was just a fun one of a local family member who is from Oaxaca brought that bottle back from Mexico for a wedding.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I could see strawberries. I could see
hand
it.
painted.
I could see it.
Dusty Jolly Rancher.
Yeah.
It's something I love about all this stuff we're talking about is that in America, we have this idea that if you have the most money, then you get to have the best.
Right.
But that's not really true.
No.
Because you don't know where the best is. Because the best is being produced at such a small scale. It's subjective, first of all. But the best tea, for sure, just because you have money does not mean that you can have the best tea. You might have the most famous tea, the most expensive tea, but you cannot get the best tea because you don't know that you don't have the relationships.
Well, there's no accounting for taste.
There's no accounting for taste, and there's a degree to which I think that there's a beauty to the way that those things can evade these kind of market aphorisms that it's like, the best is the most expensive, price equals quality. And I agree with what you're saying. It's like if you want to know about the quality, if it's all in the same bottle, if it's all in the same bag, the price is the quality. If it's not, then they're not going to make it. If they don't, unless they're really good at marketing. But I think that's really, really lovely, and something that's like just some random ass thing that you get to enjoy, and maybe it's the best you'll ever have in your life, and you could have a more expensive thing somewhere else, and it won't be better.
Yeah, this bottle actually taught me that I like mezcal. Like I never liked any of the clear alcohols,
nice.
tequilas or anything like that. But this is the first one I really had and really got to spend some time with, and as it turns out, I do like mezcal.
And there really isn't any smoke on the nose. The umami and the smoke is more on the palate.
And potentially, if it was steeped with berries, traditionally it's called pachuga, even though pachuga means breast and not fruit. It's distilled 3 times, thusly getting, as we talk, more acid and more refined and more alcohol too, right? Usually improve.
Beautiful. Well,
Cool.
thank you, Corey, and thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah.
This has been amazing.
It's been really a pleasure.
Stoked to have a mezcal episode because, like I said, whiskey, mezcal, and baijiu are my 3 favorite spirits.
There are so many small categories that are out there in the world, and I wonder when people come into the liquor store, like, where did you get a taste for that? And it always has to do with some kind of cultural exchange.
Yeah.
And it includes military or peacekeeping efforts, going to different parts of the world and coming back, because a lot of times, like that Tony Bourdain reference, that No Reservations, where they sit down with these families, and it's a small artisanal thing that they're making in somewhere in the middle of Hungary or in the middle of the Middle East, and you're finding something to sit down and enjoy their culture and participate with what they're doing, how they farm, and I find that more interesting than anything else, that cultural exploration and learning about other people's cultures, because we all have them.
Yes, it all lies in curiosity. So once you
Absolutely.
lose that characteristic, you lose a lot.
Yeah.
Mike,
So-
thank you so much
Yeah, it's a
for
pleasure.
coming out here. This has been
Yeah, it's
awesome.
been great. Appreciate y'all drinking along.
Yeah,
Beautiful
yeah.
teas. Thank you for
Thank
sharing.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is going to spoil you if you come over to West China Tea, and they also have an online presence, so you
Yep.
can order tea online.
Yep, westchinatea.com. And I know by the time this episode comes out, the sale will be over. But we're having a sale right now, Cyber Monday.
And Whiskey Provisioner, we're here with you. We want to learn about what you're doing. So send us an email, whiskeyprovisioner@gmail.com. If you want to come and sit at the tea house and have some tea, we would love to have you and explain.
And the tasting room.
Yeah.
And the Creador has got a new tasting room.
Visit us at barsingular.com, SINGULAR. We do by appointment only, so it'll always be one-on-one. Usually we chat with me and drink
Oh,
along,
yeah.
so we'd love to see you.
Cool, Bastrop, Texas. Yeah, so there's lots going on over on the east side of Austin. So cheers to y'all. Thanks for joining us.
Salud.